What is up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a Buffalo football podcast. We are here live at Wingnutz, 4600 Genesee Street in Cheektowaga, right by the airport. Ed, how are you today, my friend?
Doing good.
Let me just, we're having some technical difficulties. That's why we started so late today. I'm going to check the audio. You're going to talk while I mess with it, and Ryan is going to be your host. So there you go. Take over for me.
Sounds good. Do your thing. Well, like I told you earlier, Ryan, part of the reason that I love being here with you guys is because I finally get to hear the truth of what the Bills are really doing, as opposed to all the garbage out there. But we'll start with a story.
Absolutely. Go right ahead.
So this happened last January. By the way, hello, Wingnutz. All right. And as usual and as always, I would like to thank God for everything that Wingnutz has become and for all of you guys that are involved in making this production happen. But in any case, so this happened in January. Chris and AJ and Alicia and myself and one of our cooks traveled to Atlanta, Georgia to do the college football championship game. We were going to do a tailgate party for it. We left. We had this big truck, all of us stuffed in the truck, hauling the wing wagon, and we left Buffalo in a snowstorm. And we drove. We're on our way. It's a 12-hour ride. It was just coming down. We had a sign on the top of the wing wagon. We flip it up, and it says Wingnutz, and you could see it for miles. It was a really big sign. It's somewhere in Cincinnati. It got ripped off by the wind. The weather was just so bad. We get all the way down there. We're there for 4 days. We only had to cook the last day. We thought, we're going to be in Atlanta, Georgia. At least it'll be warm. The snow will be gone. We were cooking in 19-degree weather. It was so cold, we couldn't even do our jobs. Well, we got through it, and we started coming home, and we're dragging the wing wagon, and by the time we hit New York, gigantic snowstorm again. And we pulled the wing wagon through it, and when we got back to the Millersport store, half of the side of the wing wagon was curled up from the wind. So this poor thing just got its butt whooped. And it's fixed now, but it was an adventure that the five of us will never forget. So,
well, it's funny. I think any other endeavor, any other restaurant that was going on the road would probably be a lot less equipped to deal with the elements than a bunch of Buffalo guys, right?
You would think, especially since we knew we were going where the weather's supposed to be warm. Oh, no, they lied to us. It was terrible.
Before I get you out of here, I want to send out one thing. What kind of summer is this going to be for Wingnutz? I mean, you have both locations going. I mean, the energy in here tonight is great. I was talking to John pre-show here, and it just seems like there's so much awesome energy going around both Wingnutz locations. I mean, how excited are you guys for this summer?
I am so psyched, okay? Because Millersport has already been through an entire football season. Everybody knows about Millersport. This is going to be the first full football season for Genesee Street, and I'm expecting exactly the same thing to happen. This place is going to go crazy. Starting now, I mean, because here comes training camp, then the preseason, and before you know it, football's here. And I'm counting on this place filling up just like the other store did and having a great football season. I'm also counting on a Super Bowl win too. So
I love that. Yeah.
Well, listen, don't count your chicken wings before they hatch. Okay, there, Ed. We do this every summer, right? We start talking about this, but I got to tell you, this is the bold predictions episode of Shout. So we're going to talk about a lot of our kind of big time predictions for training camp, a couple of players that we're going to dive into. I think that this team, with everything that it's been through over the last couple of years, is set up the best it has been to take a run at the championship. I mean, you look at what's going on in Kansas City right now. I mean, they're banking on Travis Kelce to still be Travis Kelce, and I don't think that he looked like that at the end of last season. Question marks in Cincinnati. They beat Baltimore in the playoffs last year, so who knows? Maybe we'll do the Super Bowl show at Wingnutz in a couple of months.
That would be great. I'm also still counting on my 14 regular season wins. I really want to see that happen, but I still want to see them go all the way. Just go all the way.
Give it up for Ed. Thank you so much, buddy. We appreciate you having us. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Let's bring Ryan Talbot in here. What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing great, Matt. A lot to talk about tonight.
Yeah, this is only our second show in probably the last 3 weeks or so. And I got to be honest, I've been kind of lackadaisical. I've been getting in my R&R. I'm coaching a lot of baseball. But we turn our heads up here with the calendar turning over July. We got 2.5 weeks until training camp starts, and it's time to get this thing kickstarted, man. Like, we're going into full gear here on the Shout Podcast.
Yeah, we're going to go 0 to 100 really quick here because training camp hits. It's daily podcast, tons of news, tons to get into.
So we talked about it before. This is our bold predictions episode. 4 big bold predictions for the Buffalo Bills at training camp. We'll also talk tonight about the Maxwell Hairston situation at One Bills Drive. We'll get into that a little bit, what that means at cornerback for the Bills over the next couple of weeks. I don't think it means very much, but we'll get into it. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I also want to check in the Miami Dolphins making a big-time trade here over the last week. We'll get into that as well. But I want to start with your first bold prediction. Lay it on us.
Yeah, it's going to be the summer and season of Greg Rousseau. Greg Rousseau is my first bold prediction in that he is going to be unstoppable starting this summer. Someone that has come in 2 of the last 3 seasons, Matt, and had 8 sacks. This year, I think he's going to go double digits, 12-plus sacks in the regular season, and it's going to start here in training camp. Buffalo has unbelievable tackle play. We know that. But we also know how good Greg Rousseau can be, and you bring in Ryan Nielsen to this coaching staff in the offseason. Trey Hendrickson has talked about how he helped him get to the next level. He has a track record of coaching up defensive linemen. He comes to Buffalo. He gets this player that has all the intangibles you could ask for, and he helps Greg Rousseau go to the next level.
I really like this one, and I really like the getting the hype train for Greg Rousseau dialed up a little bit. And I feel like in a lot of ways, he's done that himself with what he's talked about this offseason. He signs the contract extension. The Bills get him at a bargain at $20 million per season. And now you pair him up. I was listening to a recent podcast. I can't remember who was talking about it. But Nielsen, more so than anything else, he has the ability to develop players. And I think Rousseau has developed great to this point, right? But there's still meat on the bone. There's an ability to reach another level. When you start with Rousseau, though, looking at your defense, do you feel like he is kind of the player that could take this defense to an elite level because of what they're going to depend on up front? I think they have really good players on the back end. I think Christian Benford's one of the top cornerbacks in the NFL, but we all know it starts up front. And for whatever reason, the Bills under Sean McDermott have never been able to consistently, especially in the playoffs, rely on that pass rush. How key is Greg Rousseau to getting that engine started?
He's vital. I mean, you look at the additions that they made. Bosa is a great addition to this team, but he hasn't been healthy the last few years when it matters. So they need someone coming off of the edge that can really get after the quarterback consistently, and that's going to be Rousseau. I like the depth behind him, Javon Solomon, Epinesa, too, if you're going deep in that bucket list there, but Hoyt's there as well. So it's really important and vital this year that if the Bills do make it to the Super Bowl, that they're able to consistently get after the quarterback. You saw in the Super Bowl, getting after Patrick Mahomes was the key for the Eagles, making him have to get the ball out quickly, hitting him. It made him uncomfortable. It led to turnovers. The Bills have not been able to do that when they go against the Chiefs or a lot of these other premier teams. So that is going to be one of the biggest keys this year.
Winning one-on-one, to me, is the most important piece for a defensive line that offensive coordinators have to worry about game planning against. And at times, I feel like Rousseau as a one-on-one rusher hasn't been the threat or force they need him to be as a former first-round draft pick. Now, what I think changes the math a little bit is if they can figure out a way to get him on the inside and rushing as a tackle. They went out and they brought in TJ Sanders. I think that there's some creative stuff that the Bills can do with Ed Oliver to get him on the outside. He's so athletic, and I think the more you change things, the more you can throw different looks at offensive lines, the more you can unlock this guy, because most of his sacks in his 17-sack season at Miami came from the defensive tackle position.
Yeah, it's an intriguing thought, but you look at where he's at, Matt. He's coming off of career highs and pressures, career high in pressure rate, unbelievable against the run as well. But But now those pressures need to be converted to sacks. And like you said, with the talent that they have now on that D-line, both these young players and some, older veterans as well in the mix, I really do like that happening.
If you think about this, Rousseau is now the guy with that contract, the highest paid guy in this defensive line. It's an absolutely shift from 2 years ago. When you think about Von Miller coming in here 3 years ago, and then 2 years ago coming off that injury, the money that was spent at that spot with Von Miller as a former Super Bowl champion, two-time Super Bowl champion, a guy that's probably going to be in the Hall of Fame, he's here, and I almost feel like even after the injury, still kind of like the guy that people talk about when they talk about this Bills defensive line. Now it's not that anymore. Joey Bosa is here, but the question mark with the injuries is always going to be there. To me, they paid Rousseau to be the guy, and I think to your point, if he ends up being the guy, it really makes that contract look all the bit better.
Absolutely. It was just a few years ago that Ed Oliver signed a big extension, and a lot of fans are saying, I don't know if that was a good deal. Then he goes out and has a career year. It would not surprise me whatsoever if Greg Rousseau replicated that coming off the edge.
So we're here at Wingnutz, 4600 Genesee Street in Cheektowaga, the home of the best chicken wing in Western New York. You can get them in Millersport Highway, or you can come over here right connected to the Buffalo Airport Hotel. If you're coming into town, I mean, everybody's going to be traveling into town pretty soon. Once the Bills season starts, you can start your party with a trip to Wingnuts. I was just thinking about that as I was driving over here today. If you're flying into Buffalo and like the first thing that you want to do, like, listen, no shade at, like, I know Anchor Bars in the airport,
right.
But if you want, you land, you get your bags, you walk outside, you turn left, and boom, there's Wingnuts.
Yeah, prime location for Bills fans traveling in for games, and then two great. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're back. We're back in a big way there. That's my bad. I probably shouldn't have touched anything. All right, it's time for my first big, bold prediction, and I'm going to flip things over to the offensive side of the ball. And I'm going to talk about Dalton Kincaid here for a minute, because I think in a lot of ways, Dalton Kincaid, there was a picture that was kind of floating around on social media a couple weeks ago. The big offseason talking point around Kincaid from the team, from Kincaid himself, adding strength, getting bigger. I want to kind of like talk about this for a second, because I never expected going into this offseason that Dalton Kincaid was going to come back looking like ripped as all get out and like muscles coming out of his jersey. He just doesn't have the body type for that. What I think that they were talking about with that was getting him to a place where he's more muscular. He adds a little bit of weight, playing weight, where he kind of plays on the lower end of 240, getting him to a place where he could be a little bit more physical. And you saw over the course of Travis Kelce's career, he added bulk too over the years, because you have to, if you're going to be targeted over 100 times a season, the wear and tear in the NFL, you got to find a way to stay on the field. And that's what I think they were talking about. My bold prediction for Kincaid, and I want your reaction to this, by the end of training camp, I think we're going to be talking about Dalton Kincaid as the weapon in the Bills offense. And I think that comes in a multitude of ways. Number one, the guy that I think everybody's going to expect at that point to lead this team in targets and receptions. He wasn't a year ago. Now, he missed a couple of games. But also, I think the connection with Josh Allen is going to be apparent in practice. I think this is going to be the summer of Rousseau for you on the defensive side. I think Kincaid's going to be the biggest hot button name that we're going to be talking about in August.
I like that prediction, Matt. We were expecting that one season ago. The Bills trade Stephon Diggs. They let Gabe Davis walk in free agency, and it seemed like, okay, it's going to be Dalton Kincaid's show. He suffers an injury. We don't know the severity of it. He looks a step too slow all season long. He's not on the field all the time because of the lack of blocking ability. There's a lot to that, but the Bills challenged him in the offseason to gain that strength, that core strength. Again, not expecting him to come in looking like he's added 20 pounds of bulk, but make sure that you can be counted on to block. Make sure that you can be counted on to shed off of tacklers after the catch. And I think he's done that. There was this blurry distance photo of him at one point that some fans were speculating on, saying it doesn't look like he's added any weight whatsoever. But we've heard from the coaching staff, we have heard from Kincaid himself that strength is there, and he is going to be a pivotal piece to this. And you mentioned Travis Kelce a little while ago. I thought it was kind of notable that no Bills were at tight end university this summer. And I think a part of it is Kincaid said he was going to spend some time this summer with Josh Allen, working on that rapport and that chemistry. And I don't know, maybe that wasn't at the same time period. We'll have to find out when we get to training camp, but it's more important for him to be working on that chemistry and rapport with Josh Allen than it was to go to tight end university, where, don't get me wrong, it's great for players to learn from one another. But at this point, he needs to make sure that he is in lockstep with Josh Allen.
If you go back to the end of last season and how it ended for the Bills and Dalton Kincaid dropping that pass, like, to me, I think about like the best Hollywood movies that are made and the storylines that come up with, experiencing great like defeat before finding a way to break through and find success. To me, that's Dalton Kincaid this offseason, right? He had to sit there with that drop lingering in his head all offseason long. The other piece to the Dalton Kincaid component for me is Joe Brady was tinkering with a lot of things going into last season. He had taken over for Ken Dorsey midway through 2023, comes in at 2024, trying to figure out a way to get everybody to eat. And here's another part about this that I think the Bills should think about. I think they should. I'm fine with everybody eats as the public mantra, but I think internally, Joe Brady has to make sure that Dalton Kincaid eats, because he's a first-round draft pick that they traded up for. He's got to be a guy that consistently gets 10-plus targets in games. It doesn't have to be every game, but I think if you go back to last season, there was only 2 games where he had 10 or more targets. That can't be the case. I think Dalton Kincaid has to be somebody that they zero in on defensively week in and week out to try to figure out a way to take him out of a game plan. And if Dalton Kincaid becomes this kind of force, it then takes the pressure off of a wide receiver crew lacking maybe a traditional number 1 wide receiver. Now, I'm also really bullish on Keon Coleman going into year 2, but I think Dalton Kincaid has to be the top dog in this offense in the passing game.
Yeah, I would almost say like change the mantra to like everyone snacks. Everyone gets those few targets here and there, but Dalton Kincaid, make sure that he is consistently getting about 10 targets a game. Make sure James Cook is getting worked in the running game, as much as you love that the second and third running back in Ray Davis and Ty Johnson. Coleman, give him a few games here and there where he gets those targets. But I want to say it should be Dalton Kincaid, Khalil Shakir in the passing game, and then probably, James Cook in that run game too. You don't want to go away from that because of how successful they were. So make sure you're feeding those premier players, but then keeping everyone else involved as well.
Typically, I was actually doing a little research before the show, trying to figure out, is there an example of a tight end who really took a jump into year 3? The closest thing that I can really take as like a dramatic jump, a lot of things happen for tight ends in year 2. Like, Travis Kelce was invisible in that offense in year 1, and then he really exploded in year 2. Trey McBride, if you go back and watch year 1, now he was a 55th overall pick. Kincaid was 25, a little bit of a different, place in the draft. But it almost felt like this like building storm for McBride in that offense. And last year in year 3, he really exploded. And I think like Joe Brady has heard the noise when it comes to Kincaid. And I think when they hear that noise, they're very specifically trying to quiet that noise because they really believe in this guy. Like everybody that you've talked to inside that building, including Brandon Beane, when you bring up Dalton Kincaid, they're defensive, like almost immediately. And I think that a lot of people in that building, most importantly, Josh Allen, want him to have a breakout season. And I think that we're setting things up, if we want to take this beyond training camp, as a breakout season for Dalton Kincaid.
I love that. And with Joe Brady too, I mean, this is a big season for him. He became a head coach candidate after a great first season. He's going to be there as well, as long as this Bills offense flows the way it did 1 year ago. But if he can prove that he can get guys open on a consistent basis and feed the ball to a player like Dalton Kincaid, that's only going to help his star to grow as a coordinator and then a head coach candidate in this league. So love that prediction, Matt.
So some big news. We got a new sponsor to roll out. We're obviously here at Wingnutz. Our every month live show happens right here at Wingnutz, either here 4600 Genesee or over on Millersport Highway 1402. But Amtrak is in the house. I'm so excited. Amtrak's Empire Service, it offers frequent departures daily from Niagara Falls, Buffalo, all the way to New York City. And I got to tell you, every time me and my wife go to New York City, we take the train all the way to Poughkeepsie. Then we drive all the way to Poughkeepsie, take the train all the way into New York City. Amtrak, now one of the official sponsors of the Shout Buffalo Football Podcast.
I love it. That third down train whistle, Amtrak's on board. Joel and I have always talked about taking a trip on a train, and maybe Amtrak's going to be that for us.
The stops include Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, Schenectady, Hudson, Poughkeepsie, Rhinecliff, you name it. Anywhere you want to go in New York State, it is just an awesome way to travel. The comfort, there are no middle seats when you take a train. Plenty of leg room, reclining seats, stretch out, read, work, watch a movie, sleep. You don't have the stress from driving. So it's an awesome way to travel, and we are so glad to have Amtrak aboard. Before we get to our bold prediction, some big breaking news. Where are we going on Monday, Ryan?
We are going to the National Comedy Center in Jamestown, New York, another sponsor of Shout. We have been in talks about going there one of these days, and they're excited to have us. We're excited to be there.
Hey, if you have nothing to do on Monday, make the drive out. I didn't have any drinks today, so I just stumbled there. But I have not had anything to drink other than water. If you want to get out to Jamestown, come on out. We're going to do the Comedy Center from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Check out everything that they have to offer. It is just unbelievable. The different skits that you can do, all of the history of comedy, all of the different kind of fun ideas that they have. I'm so excited to check it all out.
Pumped, as an educator too, when you first go there, you almost have to take a quiz, which I know that doesn't sound probably riveting
You would
to a
get
lot of
excited
people.
about a quiz,
But
Talbot.
they ask you about your favorite comedians and what kind of comedy you like, and based on that, they point out what exhibits you should check out in order. So really cool, next level thinking in terms of how to make that user experience that much better.
Let me ask you this before we get to your second big bold prediction. We'll get to 3 of 4, and then I'll have one more. What would be the circumstances of a Buffalo Bills offensive regression this year? Because I think a lot of people look at last year, you're running back pretty much everybody. The only people that you're not bringing back, Amari Cooper, who was kind of banged up, never really found his home in the offense. Mac Hollins, who actually scored the most receiving touchdowns for the Bills last season, but probably want to upgrade from that type of player as well. But is there a way you see this offense not being the kind of scoring machine that it was a year ago?
It would just be turnovers. I mean, this team was so good, specifically Josh Allen, at protecting the football one season ago. So if he regresses in terms of the interceptions, the fumbles, or just the offense in general, that's the only thing that I think could stop this, because they showed one season ago they don't necessarily need star power to move the ball, score points. And I think they've, the offense, like you said, they're running it back. I think there's some upgrades there. Elijah Moore's really come in and carved out a spot in the spring where I think if he follows that up this summer, he'd be a great wide receiver 4 or 5 on this team. Ray Davis, I think, is going to have a bigger role in year 2, and we saw what he could do when given a spot start last season. So guys are returning, but they're also going to be a little bit healthier in some cases, like Curtis Samuel. So it's not going to be a talent issue. It'd be a turnover issue for me.
So for me, I love that take. I'll kind of spin off of that and say protecting Josh Allen has been something that this team has done at such a high level. Like Warren Sharp put out a tweet a couple days ago where he listed sacks allowed last season, and how he does it is he puts the top number, which was like 62 sacks or something for whatever team that was. Then he goes down the list all the way down to 0. And you have to scroll all the way down to get to the Bills, who only allowed 14 last year. And it's funny when people talk about that tweet, it's like, okay, this is a Josh Allen tweet, or this is an Aaron Cromer, the offensive line coach tweet, or just this unbelievable offensive line that 2 years running stays healthy year after year, start after start. So to me, what would change the math a little bit is if you had any significant injuries on that offensive line, or if you don't get the same level of play. Now, I think for the most part, all these guys, maybe outside of like David Edwards, is still kind of in their prime, or even maybe not even to their prime yet. In the likes of Osiris Torrance, even Spencer Brown, I think still has a little bit of ways to go. He's probably just entering his prime, maybe last season. But to me, that's the most important part. Keeping Josh Allen upright. He has a big role in that. And I think that you're excited to hear how much he's still putting into taking his own game to the next level. I mean, the guy just is coming off of an MVP award. He's got the computer science guys out at practice 3 times already this offseason, mapping all of his mechanics. He doesn't want to regress at all because the main goal hasn't been found yet.
Right. Winning that Super Bowl is still the main goal, and he's still laser focused on that. I think the offensive line is going to be fine. I love the depth that they still have there. And, what's funny, you said, is this could be a Josh Allen stat with the lack of sacks. We have seen some bad offensive lines in Josh Allen's time, and he does do such a good job of avoiding sacks where I think where you have that in your back pocket too, if they do get beaten on a play, knowing that Allen can elude that pressure certainly helps as well.
All right, so I'm going to flip things back to the defensive line. I'll leave a little intrigue for your second big bowl prediction, and I'll say mine. And listen, I texted you this today, and I think at first I was like, listen, I'm toying with this idea. It's very bold, and I don't know if it's necessarily going to come true. But let me throw this at you. Dorian Williams beats out Matt Milano to be the outside linebacker starting in week 1 next to Terrell Bernard. Now, I think there's a lot of Bills fans that absolutely love Matt Milano for a multitude of reasons. And this isn't so much a Matt Milano take as it is a Dorian Williams take. You know, I'm really high on this guy. I think entering year 2, seeing the kind of production that he had last season, and then you take a look, a little bit of a deeper dive at Matt Milano's production last season, and I have a couple of issues with Milano going into this season. Number 1, can he stay healthy? I texted you. Groin injury 3 weeks into being back, then hamstring injury in the playoffs. Now, he was able to play through both. He didn't miss a lot of time, but this is a guy that at this age, he had soft tissue issues before the 2 big injuries. And then you talk about like ACL, you talk about like all these kinds of like game-changing injuries for a player, the biceps injury last year. Can he play a full season? And so I wonder, does it make sense to put Matt Milano in a Joey Bosa type role where you want to keep him kind of in waiting and not ask him to play a full 17-game schedule? And I think Dorian Williams is a guy that, like, you're still seeing this steady ascent from him and what he's able to do on the field.
Yeah, 100%. And I like this idea. Matt Milano from year 1, 2017, when they drafted him, has come in and established himself. He was one of the best linebackers in the league at one point in time, but the injuries have taken a little bit of a toll on him. We saw that last year. We saw him miss significant time from when we were at that joint practice when it was announced all the way into the regular season, and then getting dinged up late in the year. So if you see enough out of Dorian Williams this summer where, okay, you know, the athleticism is there, he flies around the field, sideline to sideline, how is he in terms of the leadership, barking out instructions? You know, and I know Terrell Bernard does that for the most part, but there needs to be great communication between the linebackers and defense as a whole. So how does he handle that part of it? If he passes that, then I don't think it's a bad idea to give Williams a shot at starting opposite Bernard, and then bring Matt Milano in on key downs where you can count on him to blitz, get after the quarterback. Know that if you're just giving a breather to Dorian Williams, that he's going to be in the right spot and know what to do.
Ryan Nielsen's presence and so many of the coaches that they brought in. I mean, Pellegrino from New England. I mean, this guy's got a lot of years in the league. You know, you have Al Holcomb as a linebackers coach. This is a guy with defensive coordinator experience. Mike Dana, super experience. What I think you have across this whole defense now is the ability to get a little bit more creative with how you deploy your players, the roles that you have with them. Maybe Matt Milano entering this stage of his year, you mentioned this, the communication factor. Maybe he could play a little outside. Maybe he could play a little Mike. Maybe you could start to, think about getting 3 linebackers on the field a little bit more. Taron Johnson was banged up on 2 separate occasions last year. He's not getting any younger. To me, your key pieces, Taron Johnson, Milano, Christian Benford, Rousseau, you need them as close to 100% for your playoff run. That's got to be priority number 1. We've seen the AFC East titles. We've seen the regular season success. You need to be whole and ready for the playoff run. And I think with a guy like Matt Milano, I'd heavily consider a more supplementary role. And it's hard, right? How do you tell a guy like that, right, who's a former All-Pro, to take a backseat to a guy like Dorian Williams? But you want to talk about toughness. Dorian Williams played through an elbow injury last year that I think would have probably sidelined most players. The guy is super tough. He plays like he just flies around the field. He is a heat-seeking missile. He plays a lot like Matt Milano did, 5-6 years ago, and that's not a bad thing or a knock on Milano. He's just at a different stage in his career.
100%. And, Milano saw Von Miller last year and how he was on a pitch count and how the Bills utilized him.
Listen, I gave you our mark before we started this show. And you've just been standing on the mark the whole entire time.
That's my bad.
And I'm just like, Ryan's just out here like this. Yeah, I'm just doing the show. Just get out of the way, Parrino.
Sorry about that. No, it's all right. But he saw Von Miller last year on a pitch count. And I know Von Miller didn't put up any kind of gaudy stats, but it was to preserve him and keep him healthy throughout the year. And in that regard, it did work to a certain extent. So Milano, knowing his age, knowing that this is the final year of his contract as well, he might say, if I can prove I can stay healthy, even if it's in a backup or a role where I'm not playing as much, that's going to help him too possibly find a new home or even show the Bills that, okay, we can trust him on this depth chart.
I also think Dorian Williams at this stage of his career can be your first and second down player. And you can then now put Matt Milano into very specific coverage situations and blitz situations. Go back to the AFC title game. What was one of the biggest plays in that game? Kansas City was up by 5 points. They were driving. They were about to enter the red zone. Matt Milano comes up with an absolutely game-changing sack in that game. It was one of his highlights of that postseason run. Wasn't very good against Baltimore, I didn't think. Had his struggles at times against Kansas City. I just think easing him back in and not putting too much on his plate. And, oh, by the way, we got to get through an entire summer with him healthy, which is the main point on all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. It starts this summer at St. John Fisher University, and it's going to be a big year for Milano and Dorian Williams, as well as even Joe Andreessen, who really stepped up in the spring. So a lot of eyes on this linebacker room.
All right, so it's your turn. You're gonna close down this segment of the episode here. What's your big, bad, bold prediction? And I got to be honest with you. I'm kind of upset that I closed with this.
It's not as bold. Yeah,
it's not as bold as I was hoping it was going to be. Disappointed.
This summer.
Do you want to change it at all?
Are
you thinking last second here? All right, go ahead. Go ahead with your bold prediction.
My bold prediction is Mike White beats out Mitch Trubisky for quarterback 2 this summer. I think the more upside in Mike White's game. I know the turnovers are an issue. In the regular season finale when he played, it was not very impressive, but I'm going in this summer, keeping an eye on Mike White to unseat Mitch Trubisky for quarterback 2.
All right, that is a prediction. I will give you that. That is a prediction. We can discuss how bold it is. Here's the thing, though. A lot of people have said about this quarterback competition for the backup spot, Mitch Trubisky is like Josh Allen's best friend, and they're so good. Mike White and Josh Allen are super close. Like, if you go back to last season, Josh Allen, I can't remember what week it was. I think it was during the training camp or maybe early preseason. He took his entire quarterback's room to a New York Yankees game in Toronto because the Yankees are Mike White's favorite team, and it was his birthday. Those two guys have gotten super tight, and I think that if you want to talk about that room in general, Bouchel, who doesn't really have a shot at it, I don't think, and then Trubisky and White, any one of them, if they were to win it, they all have equal kind of like relationships with Josh Allen, and he's also mentioned all three of them are very valuable to him with their football IQ, their football understanding and knowledge, and how to be an asset to him as the starter.
Yeah, and relationships do matter, but we've seen a lot of guys that have been close to Josh Allen leave as well. I mean, many years ago, Tanner Gentry, that was his best friend from college. There's a reason that he didn't stick around on the practice squad for very long or on this roster in general. At some point, you just have to say talent wins out. And like you mentioned, there's a good relationship with Mike White and Trubisky.
We're here at 4600 Genesee Street, right next to the Buffalo Airport, connected to the Buffalo Airport Hotel. Wingnutz, best wing in town. Come out any night. Check out Wingnutz, the new location. It is absolutely bustling. They're excited for football season. The TV setup in here is absolutely outstanding, Ryan. Like that's the big thing for me. Like, when you go to a bar, like a bar restaurant, like the food's important, the drinks are important, but I want to be able to watch a game. And there's not a bad seat in the house to just, pull up a seat and watch a game.
And you're not going to miss a game. There's so many TVs that they have. Right now, I'm just looking at 3 different games alone. There's a commercial right here, and around the room, many other games too. So whatever you're looking for, you'll be able to find it here at Wingnutz.
All right. So next piece of this, I want to talk about Maxwell Hairston for a little bit. Obviously something that I don't think surprised many people, that the fact that this was a civil suit filed against him, sexual assault is the accusation from his freshman year at Kentucky. This is something that kind of like when we were doing our draft preview shows, we were talking about this as a potential red flag when it comes to Maxwell Hairston. And luckily enough, Brandon Beane was asked by Catherine Fitzgerald from the Buffalo News about this right after the Bills selected him at pick number 30. And Brandon Beane came out and put full support behind Maxwell Hairston. He basically said, listen, the university did the deep dive into the Title IX accusation. The authorities apparently checked into it. And The NFL as a league, apparently, according to Brandon Beane, would not have invited Hairston to the NFL Combine had this been an issue. The timing of it is interesting. Obviously, this happened back in 2021. The lawsuit, the civil suit's coming after he was drafted 4 years later. Not something that you want to be in the news for. And listen, these kinds of situations are always troubling when you're connected to this kind of thing. It's something that is alarming for a team too, in an organization that just went through the Matt Araiza situation a couple years ago. But obviously going through that, you'd think that Brandon Beane was probably more equipped to do his due diligence and figure this out as an organization. Where they landed with Hairston was in a place where they believe in the kid, his story. He said he would have taken a polygraph test. We'll see how it transpires, but I don't think it will affect anything for the immediate future as we look to training camp.
Yeah, that is correct. With civil suits, I'm not expecting it to affect Hairston or the Bills whatsoever. Very serious matter, though, as you pointed out. So it's important to discuss and talk about. But in the case of Hairston, I really do feel like Brandon Beane learned from Matt Araiza, and the fact that there was a time where, there's some things that I didn't know that came to light, and it caused the Bills to kind of move ahead and with moving on from him. After the Bills drafted Hairston, as you mentioned, Beane was asked about it. He said the team had done their due diligence. The university had done its due diligence. The Title IX, everything. The Bills had their ducks in a row, essentially. The NFL did as well by inviting him to the draft itself. So he learned from a previous player that he drafted, and he felt comfortable enough to pick Hairston at pick 30. So I think that, as you mentioned, nothing's going to come out of this, at least in the immediate future. Will it be a distraction to Hairston? Possibly. But you've seen him training on social media since this news has come out. He's still putting in the work leading up to training camp at St. John Fisher University.
Yeah, the one thing that kind of lingers out there is we haven't heard from Hairston on this yet. We'll be asked about it at training camp, and he's entering a training camp situation where he's kind of in the back seat waiting for an opportunity to jump in the passenger seat next to Christian Benford, who's driving the cornerback room vehicle right now. So we'll track that over the course of the summer. Let's talk about the Miami Dolphins for a second before we get out of here, because a very much I don't want to say franchise altering, but a couple of important pieces out and a couple of new pieces in. They sent Jonnu Smith, who actually I think outdid any expectations anybody ever had for him in Miami. They sent him to Pittsburgh along with Jalen Ramsey, who we all knew was going to be traded. They bring back Minkah Fitzpatrick at safety, which is an important spot because Javon Holland is no longer there. And now they also make a trade with the New York Giants to add in Darren Waller, who I would imagine the bank account is running a little bit low and probably needed another contract.
Little boost.
Yeah, a little boost. What is your expectations for both of those new players now in Miami? Because I think Fitzpatrick, the one thing with him is like he's declining player, right? Darren Waller was a declining player before he decided to retire. How much does this move the needle for you?
It doesn't move the needle much for me at all because of what it costs to bring Fitzpatrick in. And you mentioned they were going to move on from Jalen Ramsey, but that cornerback room is a disaster now. Absolutely just a disaster. Cam Smith is going to be their number one cornerback, and Duck Storm is going to be the outside starter as well. So not a great outside corner duo. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, I still think he's 28 years old. He's not out of his prime yet. He had a down year, though, in Pittsburgh last season, in my opinion. He was coming in ranked as the number 16 safety on their rankings going into this year. He's still one of the better safeties in this league, but the cornerbacks aren't going to be even in the top 20, in my opinion, unless they really come along and gel. And at the end of the day, this offense in Miami is really going to have to put up a lot of points to win games. I don't know if they can do that. They move on from Jonnu Smith, who had a career year, and the plan is to replace him with Waller, who hasn't had a great season since 2020.
Yeah, I'm not very high on either of these additions. And the problem with Fitzpatrick is, okay, you're excited to add a high-level safety, you hope. Even the second version of this player I still think is a good starting option. The problem is now without Jalen Ramsey, the cornerback situation for the Miami Dolphins is absolutely terrible. And then on the other side of the ball, Listen, Tyreek Hill, the wheels are about to fall off. And I say that not as with any pun intended. I know he's known for his speed. I'm very bearish on his ability to continue to be a top wide receiver in the NFL. He basically quit on his team last year, and he's back in the mix this year. And oh, by the way, Tua Tagovailoa never stays healthy. So I think the Miami Dolphins are the fourth best team in the AFC East. I don't think either of these moves has moved the needle for me personally. I think the Jets are going to be better because I think their defense is going to bounce back. I think Justin Fields will give them a little bit more consistency at the position, and the running part of things I think could be interesting. He played with Garrett Wilson at Ohio State. I think Garrett Wilson in a contract year is going to be very motivated to put Justin Fields on the map. I think the Jets are going to be better. And I also think that the Patriots are the second best team in the division.
Yeah, the Patriots have come a long way with addressing their offensive line, adding some weapons for Drake May. Defense is looking better. So Miami, though, is entering a huge season for Mike McDaniel, their GM. A lot of primetime games, just as many as the Bills, if I remember correctly, maybe even one more. And if they are not playing well, it wouldn't shock me if there was a head coach change there at some point this season.
So I got to say, thank you, everybody, for watching this episode of 3.5 Buffalo Bills bold predictions for training camp. Our guy, RJ Krasinski, right now over on X, he's got a great idea. We're at Wingnuts every month, so you got to come out to the live show. But now that Amtrak is aboard as an official sponsor, he said we got to do the official Hype Train Bills moment of the week, the Amtrak Hype Train Bills moment of the week. I love that idea, RJ. More to come on that. We'll talk about that offline. For Ryan Talbot, I am Matt Parrino. Stay tuned for details on our training camp Wingnuts collab. We'll be back in Rochester. We can't wait for that show. Until then, we'll be back next week. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.